Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back to the Chaotic Seamstress. We are here today to show you our basic tools, ones that are both required and recommended. And this is...
I'm Baroness Kata.
And this Lady Stritter.
Welcome. So video 3. Woo, we're back. First things first, I think everybody needs to know the basics of what you actually need just to start sewing.
And with all of these items, we're going to go over what is required to start sewing versus what is recommended. As we said in one of our previous videos, you know, we've got about 50 years of sewing experience, so it's one of those, we've been around the block a few times, and so there are definitely things that we'll recommend.
And we've both been in other kingdoms too.
Yeah.
I started in Onstiora.
Yeah, and I started in Ontier. So it's one of those, the things that you need in different regions are going to change, and that's okay.
But sewing basics, these pretty much stay the same, no matter what.
So,
first things first, tape measures. There are different kinds. You'll need a cloth tape measure, which is what she's showing. There's even the kind that comes in a wonderful spindle.
And it's really important that you have a cloth tape measure to get accurate measurements, because if you're trying to take measurements with something that's hard and doesn't bend, you're not going to be able to get accurate measurements. Oh, this
Peaches is saying hi. She wants her lovin's too. Very much wants her lovin's, and she's adamant because she's my girl.
So these are about 99 cents. You can get them at Walmart or any craft store, but this is required.
You can also get them at your local Family Dollar, Dollar Tree, Dollar General, your little cheapy stores. Guarantee you they have them. And if you can't find them there, go to your local corner store, the gas stations. They have little hand sewing kits that come in nice compact packages you can take with you on airplanes. Because sometimes you got to sew a button back on.
Yeah.
It sucks.
And if you absolutely cannot afford one of these cloth tape measures, trick that I learned early on, you can actually use a piece of thread that you can then use to make your measurement and then measure it against a straight, flat, hard surface. So, but this is a requirement.
That one, biggest requirement. And as always, measure twice, sometimes thrice.
Yeah.
Cut once.
Yeah, I think the both of us have made that mistake and then just looked at the garment we're working on and just been like,
Especially whenever it's that wonderful, expensive fabric.
It's fantastic.
Next, you will need a handy dandy pair of scissors.
And these will be fabric scissors, not paper scissors.
There is a difference, I promise.
And please, if you want your fabric scissors to last as much as possible and not get dulled with cutting them on other items, I heavily recommend you do not use fabric scissors on paper or metal or basically anything that is not fabric.
Yes. Another item that is mandatory to be able to sew, just your basics. A box of straight pins that can come in varying lengths.
So these ones in particular are quilting pins. They're about 3 inches long. They are some of the easier ones to use. There's also shorter pins, which will come standard, that are a little bit smaller. There.
This way you have something to hold it against.
Yeah, and then so there's some pins there, and then we also have these are quilting pins, which you can tell are a bit longer.
And it's good to start with your longer pins, the quilting pins, than the shorter ones, because you'll be able to see them.
Yes, and then you also can find silk pins, which are going to be very small, very delicate, so that they do not damage the silk fabric. Those, I think they're about $4 for a box about that big. You can, again, get it at a crafting store. But
you can get them at Walmart.
Yeah. But until you start working with some of those silk fabrics, quilting pins will work just fine for you.
As you continue to advance, there will be other items that you will want. The other mandatory is a handy dandy iron with different settings on it. There should be your power button, nylon, wool and silk, polyester, your linen cotton. So there should be about 4 to 5 different settings. Sometimes it'll have a button, other times it'll have a dial. 9 times out of 10, your cotton and linen is going to be the highest setting, which means it'll burn the hottest.
Which, if you can't afford one of the expensive irons, you can get one for about $8 to $10 at Walmart. It's orange. And you might also want a spray bottle that you can spray your fabric with water before you iron it, because sometimes those cheaper irons, they do leak.
And it also helps to get wrinkles out faster.
Mm-hmm. And then also, you don't have to have an ironing board, but it is recommended. If you do not have an ironing board, you can lay down 3 to 4 cotton towels and then iron on top of that. But we heavily recommend an ironing board, which you can again find at Walmart, Joann's, any of your craft stores.
Other things that are quite handy so that you don't cut into the floor by accident or cut your fabric in the wrong areas is actual cutting boards. And those can come in a variety of sizes, a variety of textures.
Mm-hmm.
So there's heavy plastic ones. There's this one that has different measurements on it and gives you an exact inch. Because those grids come in quite handy whenever you are looking for an exact on something. And it protects your floor.
They also have ones that are clear or opaque so that you can see the fabric underneath if you have it on top of a fabric. We also have, there's ones that come in different shapes. There's round ones, circle ones, there's half circles, there's little half squares. Pretty much any shape that you might need to cut or need a guideline for, they will make some sort of cutting surface for you.
And then there's even this one that is like an accordion bolt. Kind of nice, little bulky, easy to tear up really fast. So it's good to start with so you can kind of get a basic understanding of how hard you're cutting through something.
So the accordion types are going to be on the cheaper end. And then the multicolored one we showed earlier is going to be a little bit more expensive, more in the $20 range for the startups, and then ranging to $30 to $40 for the large cutting mats.
Now then, we've got the basics knocked out. What else would you need? Butcher's paper, old Christmas paper, newspapers. Butcher paper, or painter's paper, comes in a spool. It likes to roll up on itself, so you can lay it down flat and then lay down whatever fabric you're using on top of this to kind of cut out your pattern. I would strongly advise using an old sheet.
If you want to make a mock-up, is what they call it, of your pattern so that you can try it on, see if it's going to fit you, you could definitely use a very old sheet. It's right over there. A very old sheet that you can get at a thrift store or anything like that that's already been washed and used a couple times, and use that to make your pattern. And then that way you have one that's usable. And you can tear it apart, put it back together, alter it, and it's going to work really well for you. Another type of patterning that you can use is a clear or opaque pattern paper that you can get off Amazon. You can get it in anywhere between 10 inches wide to 34 inches wide. Some even are about 50 inches wide for some of those larger pattern pieces. and they compact really well if you're trying to save space.
Yeah. Ziploc bags, excellent way to keep your patterns kind of sealed together all in one spot. Just make sure you label the outside of the bag and put the year that you made the pattern, because as we age, our sizes change. Sometimes we get much smaller, sometimes we get larger.
And sometimes we don't change weight, but our size changes on us anyways.
Which can be a little frustrating.
Yeah.
Now, you have your basic scissors that are for fabric only.
Yeah, fabric only.
Whenever you're cutting paper, make sure that you have a separate pair that is for cutting the pattern paper. Whenever you're dealing with fabric that likes to move around a lot, you want what's called pinking shears. They kind of look like they have alligator teeth. And they're thicker and heavier.
And when you cut through fabric, it kind of gives you that crisscross edging.
These are great for fabrics that like to fray. Think like prom dresses, that wonderful loud sounding fabric. That's great. Works great for your linens too, because sometimes they like to fray, especially if you can't get back to your project automatically.
Which a lot of people that sew will have multiple projects going at one time. Yes. A little bit of crafting ADD there.
Yeah. I like to call it side questing.
That's a good one.
So, you have your regular scissors, you have your paper scissors, and you have your pinking shears. This
is magic. I highly recommend it, especially if you don't like cutting with scissors. This is called a rotary cutter. So as you can see, we got a circle blade on one end and just a regular handle, and then plus you can put your guard on and off using the button. I highly recommend a rotary cutter. It's wonderful and awesome. But this is also where you will need a cutting mat if you're using a rotary cutter.
They're very sharp, and you can cut your finger very quick, especially if you're not paying that much attention.
Yeah, I can show you the scars on my hand from using a rotary cutter. All of us have it.
At least one mark.
But it also is very helpful for cutting through multiple layers of fabric at the same time if you're using the same pattern. Also, if you are doing thinner, lighter weight leathers and then even heavy linens, it will cut right through it. They also come in different sizes. So this is actually one of the smallers, but then they have, so this is the 45. They also have, I think a 60, up to a 60. So
like a pizza cutter.
Yeah.
And then they have all the way down to super tiny.
They also even have ones in different handle types. So if you have arthritis or you have a difficult time cutting, there is one with a handle with a lever underneath that you can then use to cut. So it's a little bit easier on your hands.
Yes. Things that would also be helpful. This heavy rock-looking egg has a flat side underneath. This is a fabric weight, because sometimes you don't have your friend with you to help you hold that fabric still. This bad boy, you drop it on the corner you're not on, and it holds the fabric nice and steady while you're cutting. And also good for self-defense whenever you got to throw it at somebody who's being just obnoxious and coming through in your area you don't want them in.
Oh yeah, very great for self-defense.
Yes.
Also, you don't have to have this specific type of pattern weight or paper weight or fabric weight. You can pretty much use anything that's heavy, that kind of has a smooth underneath edge, so it's not going to catch or fray any of your fabrics accidentally.
Don't use your shoes. They're usually pretty gross, I promise.
Yeah, maybe you got a stray cat that comes in.
Or puppies that like to waller everything.
So our next on the recommended but not required is actually going to be thread snips or thread scissors. You know, those may be a little hard to see. They come in a lot of different designs, a lot of different things that you can use them for, but they are also extremely sharp and they cut through thread very nicely. It's actually pretty fantastic. They're pretty wonderful. These ones are bird green, so pretty cool. The next on the recommended but not required is definitely going to be either a pencil or a pen, so that you can mark down not only measurements when you're taking them, but also if you are making notes on your pattern, you can go ahead and write those down as well. I know for me, like, I heavily recommend having a notebook where you actually keep track of all your projects and all your patterns and everything like that. So like, I keep fabric scraps in mine. I draw things up all the time. Like, you can definitely use these to keep track of all your projects and all your progress on things. Like, it's pretty wonderful, and I highly recommend it.
Another way to do this, say you're not quite ready to cut out that fabric and you don't have a sketchbook, there's things called croquettes. And it has the human form that's kind of blanks, but it has them in different poses so that you can sketch it out, see what it looks like. And it doesn't matter, the sketch doesn't have to be perfect. It's just, hey, what will this look like on a human?
Yeah. So this is one with the male figure. They also have one with female figures. They even have children ones as well.
They do, and you can find those on Amazon as well. You can also find them at Joann's craft stores. I think Hobby Lobby, maybe.
Yeah.
Really depends on your region.
And if you don't have the money or resources for that, that's okay. You can also use spiral bound notebooks that you can get during the after school sales for, I think, 89 cents.
Yeah, which is nice.
Yeah. And even those big legal pads, you can use those as well. Just I highly recommend having something that you can use to write down your ideas, and also help you try and keep track of those projects, because they can get away from you very quickly.
Yes. And some of us have a lot of side quests, so we have a lot of different books everywhere. Something else that is absolutely mandatory for whenever you start sewing with either hand or machine, your seam ripper. This is your best friend and worst enemy, all combined into one.
Oh yeah, it's both. I promise you. There are moments you're gonna be like, oh yay, my seam ripper, but I know for me, most of the time it's like, gosh darn it, now I gotta go get that darn seam ripper and rip out this thing I've been sewing on for 4 hours, and it's just awful.
Yes. Sometimes you sew stuff together that's not meant to be sewn together.
Yeah, or maybe you accidentally flipped the pattern upside down and then sewed it together and then went, oh man.
Sleeves inside out.
Yeah.
That's happened. And it's going to happen. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Something else that will help you with your drawing out the lines on your fabric of choice is different kinds of pencils that are fabric pencils. They're a little bit softer, and they're water soluble, so they will actually wash right out. Now most people will see stuff like this blue one and this white one that has a wonderful brush on the end. That's kind of like an eraser for your fabric without messing up the fabric.
And here you also can have chalk pens, and then also have actual chalk.
Taylor's chalk comes in blue, white, sometimes yellow,
or an orange.
Yeah. And it comes with this wonderful little yellow sponge, so you're not getting it all over your fingers and touching everything else. You just kind of use the edge of it, and it works right away.
Yeah. And again, Taylor's chalk is not required, but it is heavily recommended.
Yes.
If you need to start out with a ballpoint pen, that's okay. Just keep in mind that ballpoint pens, they will mark your fabric, and it will not always be washable.
And Sharpies do bleed through pretty much every fabric.
Yeah. And not only bleed through, but can spread. So we don't recommend using Sharpies at all.
A way to make sure that you have given yourself enough seam allowance.
Yeah.
2 of those wonderful fabric pencils. Tape them together. That much space will give you the right amount of seam allowance between the edge and whatever you're trying to mark out.
Mm-hmm. And then if you need more or less seam allowance, you can use different pencils, or you could even put spacers in between them. Because I know for different garments, like on most of my garments that I make for day-to-day wear that I wear a lot, I do a 1/2 inch seam allowance. But if it's something like a hat or something delicate that I'm not going to wear all the time, I'll do a 1/4 inch seam allowance, or sometimes even less.
I usually try to stick to a 1/4 inch. Less than that gets a little squirrely. And having them taped together means you will always be able to find them. Just remember which one is going to be your line that gives you your little extra, because it can happen. You'll sew on the outside line and go, well, why is this too big? Because you didn't sew on the other line. But that's okay. That's where the seam ripper comes in. Or you can start French seams. But that's going to be next video, whenever we tell you about different seam treatments. Are we missing anything to explain, show them? Oh, this. So you can have your yardstick, which is very handy, especially for your taller friends. Because some people are forever tall. Yeah. And a tape measure won't quite help. This is a drafting ruler. It's kind of triangular. And it has different measurements on it. Try to always make sure that you are paying attention to the 1 inch spacing for centimeters. Unless you like the metric system, which that works too. This just kind of gives you a nice straight line, no matter what. Usually for like your sleeves.
And if you don't have the resources right now to get a drafting ruler, you can always use one of those schoolhouse 12-inch rulers that you can get for about 50 cents each right now. And they are available at Walmart, crafting stores, etc., etc. Yes. Next is
different threads.
Different threads for different projects. So your basic thread that you're going to be able to find in most crafting stores, even Walmart in the sewing section, is going to be Coats & Clark. So Coats & Clark, this one's red. You can get in both polyester and the cotton. Polyester thread is going to be a little bit more durable than cotton thread, but it will not dye. So it won't take on another color very easily. So if you're going to be sewing with natural fabrics, I highly would recommend cotton. So, yes. So this is the Coats & Clark. This is some of the most common, some of the easiest for you to start with.
And the most pocketbook friendly.
Yes. So, and then you have, here's Gutermann right here. So Gutermann, I don't really know how to describe it. It's a little bit finer. It's
your higher end threads.
Which they also have, this one's polyester. They also have cotton. They even have silk.
So nice.
Oh, those silk threads.
But that one, I believe, is the 100% polyester. Yeah. This is also Coats & Clark. So you have itty bitty, standard size, and I've got a project that's going to take a lot.
Make it done.
This one is awesome. This one is another Coats & Clark, but it's, let's see, 1,000 meters or 1,100 yards. It is 100% polyester as well, so it's shiny. It has good tensile strength on it, so it's super, super sturdy.
And it's a good starter thread. So you'll also see those great big spools that are about like this tall and pretty thick. Those are actually serger threads. They can be either polyester or cotton, and they're very difficult to use with a regular sewing machine.
They can be.
Yeah. There's a special tool you can get.
You can work with them in a pinch, but try your best to not do that. That one really should be used on your sergers, upon which we will also discuss those at another video, because we want you to get familiar with just laying a pattern out, knowing what tools you will need for every job, no matter what. So you will need a cutting board, pair of scissors,
Mm-hmm.
a pencil or pen, a seam ripper,
Mm-hmm.
and a tape measure.
Yeah.
Those are your friends. Those are the ones that are going to at least get you through the first stage of making your garb of whatever choosing you go.
And in some of our later videos, we may go into some of the more advanced tools that we didn't show you today, but those will come at a later time.
I'm pretty sure she has those.
But that's okay. Today we're in Baroness Kata's workstation, so we'll show you some of those when we go to mine.
Yeah. Mine, I like to keep it kind of low-key.
That's okay. So I believe that's everything for today. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to either message us or leave us a comment on the video, and we'll be happy to get back to you as soon as we can. So,
thank you, and until our next adventure together,